fellow pilot, and welcome to the channel's premiere campaign diary for the Lancer RPG. If you are new to the channel, then welcome. What we do here is we take our sessions of role-playing games and we pull out all the best bits, the teachable moments, the best RP bits, and we condense them into a diary. That lets you enjoy a condensed version of our stories without needing to sit through 30 minutes of rules lookups or downtime. For our first foray into Lancer, I'm going to be running the Solstice Rain module. This module is often presented by the community as a great way to learn Lancer, so let's see if that's true. Now, for those of you that are not new to the channel, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently for these campaign diaries. Unlike other series where we do things session by session, Lancer is primarily a tactical combat game, and it's not uncommon for these combats to run over multiple sessions, especially when you have 6 players. That's why for this series, I'm not going to be doing these session by session, but instead battle report by battle report. Each diary will contain everything that leads up to a battle and then the entire battle itself, whether that went over multiple sessions or not. Then the next campaign diary will have everything after that battle, everything leading up to the next battle, and then that full battle, and so on. So essentially every episode will be roleplay and then battle. Lancer is a pretty complicated system, way too vast for me to cover in these diaries. So if you do want to know how the rules work before watching these, I'd recommend you go find one of the amazing videos that already exists on YouTube by a different channel that can go through the rules overview. Having said that, if a rule does come up that impacts the campaign diary specifically, then I will be talking about that rule. We have 6 players in this campaign. Is that a lot? Well, yeah, but I have a problem turning people down, and I'm hoping that 15 years of GMing experience will help me get through this. Introducing your pilots for this adventure. Dante, call sign Archangel, is part of the Team Effort squad on the Rio Grande. After recently graduating to the status of Lancer pilot, his combat focus is on long-range sniping and accurate firearms. He will be piloting the Everest mech known as Kane. Eleanor, call sign Mother, is an NHP, non-human person, that recently passed the required software evaluation to qualify to mech combat missions. She is the primary hacking expert assigned to the Team Effort squad. She will be piloting the Chomolungma mech known as the Princess of Eternity. Did she take that name from her Helldiver's ship? Yes, she did. Ellis, call sign Partisan, is one of the oldest graduates of the Lancer training program. He was allowed to qualify for training after years of service as a mech engineer. His combat expertise focuses on mobility and melee domination. He will be piloting the Everest mech known as the Herald of Judgment, another Helldivers fan. Pharrell, call sign Jackalope, pilots the largest and tankiest mech within the Team Effort squad. Towering over his allies, his ability to act as a protective wall for his team and a barricade to his enemies is uniquely useful. He will be piloting the Sagamartha mech known as Anodyne. Katrina, call sign Sawbones, is the temporarily assigned leader of the Team Effort squad. Her Lancer training has her focusing on support techniques and objective-based prioritization. She will be piloting the Everest mech known as Off to the Races. Finally, Laurie, call sign Aramis, was moved from Spec Ops to Lancer training and graduated with the rest of the Team Effort squad. Her upbringing instilled an interest in paracasual technology and the occult. Her mech training focused on melee combat and gravitational manipulation. She will be piloting the Everest mech known as D'Artagnan. These 6 pilots, freshly graduated, will be the heroes for this story. Now, let's get into Solstice Rain. Okay, so the first thing I should talk about is how Lancer presents its modules, or at least how Solstice Rain is presented. I haven't read the others yet. This module gives a fair amount of history on the lore that will be relevant to this specific adventure, which is great. It also provides you with a chunky introductory readout. Again, very good. However, if we get into the adventure itself, it's broken down into 2 missions and 6 fights. What the module gives you is a breakdown of the fights from a purely tactical point of view. What it doesn't do is add much information on how to thread those fights together beyond just why the fight is happening. It presents a list of NPCs and gives you advice on how and when to use them. Basically, the module, similar to the rulebook, is presented as a tactical combat game first, and then lets the GM figure out the roleplay side of it. If you're an experienced GM, that's fine. I didn't have any issues with this personally, But I am conscious that if this was someone's first time GMing, they would be a bit lost. I did not read the entire lore dump to my players. Instead, I wanted to opt for some early roleplay by removing that assumed hot start. So, let's begin the adventure. Cressidium is not your typical Union planet. In fact, its classification as a member of Union is still being negotiated. More than 500 years ago, during the overthrowing of the Second Committee of Union, hundreds of SecCon bureaucrats and military commanders fled to Cressidium to avoid the revolution. And to ensure their secrecy, they wiped all evidence of the planet from the Omninet. Until the very recent arrival of the Ebro-class light carrier, the UNSCV Rio Grande, it was actually presumed throughout the planet that Union had self-imploded and Cressidium was the sole surviving civilized planet in the galaxy. But that explains your presence here. Fresh graduates of your Lancer training, your position aboard the Rio Grande has been your first assignment, and a so far uneventful one. Cressidium has two major ruling factions, the Leandric State Alliance, known as the LSA, and the Vestan Sovereignty. These factions have been in a state of Cold War long before you arrived. Your superiors have been making repeated visits to the planet's surface to both negotiate a peace between the two factions, but also to establish Cressidium as a new member of Union. The benefits of such a deal are plentiful. Access to the universe-wide Omninet, Lancer printing technology, and access to space-faring starships. But that is all above your pay grade as Lancer pilots. You are here in the unlikely event that overwhelming military might is needed. So, that makes today a day like any other. Errands, chores, training, recreation. In the team effort mech hangar, 6 mechs tower over the mechanics. Freshly printed and as of yet unused, they stand quietly in the best state they'll ever be in again. Sat on the scaffolding supporting the mech known as the Herald of Judgment, Ellis prods at various paint buckets, deliberating on a final decal design. Below him, leaning on a nearby cart, Laurie provides her input and chats with the friendly starboard NHP, Rio. After this introduction, I threw the spotlight to Partisan and Aramis, letting them figure out the vibe and solidified them as teammates. Since they were the two melee mechs of the squad, I figured they'd have a unique relationship.
Oi, Partisan. Bit to the left, yeah?
I thought it was on center.
No, it'll look better like further down, you know? It gives it kind of like a more of a huh kind of vibe if it's low on the bicep, no?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I can see that.
Do you have a bigger one, maybe? It's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit small from down here.
Spear is rather thin. To truly bring fear to your enemies, would you not rather have something that they can see from a distance?
Well, yeah, but, you know, if I really want to do that, I need a banner. Is there any way to, you know, set up a banner on the back? It'll flutter in the wind when the howitzer fires, you know, it'll be pretty cool.
I'm sure we can speak to the printing teams.
Yes, we do that.
I mean, but we're thinking about the decal now, right? Let me look to the box. Nuclear bomb?
Nah.
Okay. What about this one? You know, classic kind of bulldog, cigar up its mouth, no?
I mean, it's pretty good, but... No, I think a spear would do it. A stylized spear tip, you know? It'll be pretty recognizable, I feel.
I let the pair RP for a while and then interrupted them with a sudden blaring alarm. And then, before they could act, we rewound, and I moved the scene to another pairing. Gunfire echoes throughout the warehouse, bouncing off the tall walls of dull shipping containers as your squad distracts the pirate militia with a frontal assault. This was the sign you were waiting for. Now's your moment to push forward and locate their leader. You know he's in the building, and you know that if you get the drop on him, you'll have the advantage. Archangel, Bonesaw, as you prepare to move in, your earpiece buzzes into life, and the voice of Megan, call sign Blue Jay, cuts through the static.
Alrighty, you're in position. Your backup has created a strong distraction, and it's now time for you to move in and find the target. What are your next steps?
This pair were in the middle of simulation training. If the first pair had been used to introduce the role-playing, then I was using these two to introduce the skill system. The first skill use would be to locate their target.
Well, those brave souls over there are providing us with a nice distraction. I say use the crates for cover, get to that office space. That's probably where the heretic lies, right?
You read my mind.
All right.
Okay. You gonna go in guns blazing or stealthy?
I would like to act unseen, so I would like to be stealthy.
The out of mech skill system in Lancer essentially works by rolling a d20. 1 to 9 means you fail, 10 to 19 means you succeed, and 20 plus means you crit. However, unlike other d20 systems, your stats do not get added to these rolls, only triggers do. Triggers are kind of vague phrases based on your past. In our example, Archangel said that he wanted to move quietly and use the act unseen trigger. When you use a trigger, you simply add a +2 to the roll. That does mean that non-combat skills are kind of swingy, but I think that's by design. If something is ever easy to do or consequence-free, you don't roll in Lancer. You only roll a skill or a trigger when there's a risk of failure, or I should say a risk to failure. If nothing interesting would happen when you fail, you shouldn't have rolled. Both of our pilots succeeded on their skill checks, so they quickly and quietly moved through the warehouse, reaching the back office where they could see that their target was desperately trying to shred documents. There were 2 additional hostiles, currently distracted helping their boss shred this documentation. The duo staggered their attack, beginning with a take someone out trigger from Archangel, and then moving into an assault trigger from Sawbones. Again, these were both successful and they cut down the 2 guards. Their target obviously noticed these deaths as Sawbones was using a firearm, so he dived for a weapon. Archangel rushed forward and put his sword to the man's throat. Since he had no applicable trigger, this was a flat d20. Luckily, his luck seems pretty insane and he rolled a natural 20, so critically succeeded. Then, before the scene could continue, a sudden loud alarm went off, shutting down the simulation and kicking them back into reality and the chaos of a mobilizing starship. I rewinded and moved the scene one more time. As my newest players, I wanted to focus my efforts here on getting them to tell me what was happening. Since Lancer is an open information game, it feels especially primed to have players chip in with the environment and the world building. During this adventure, I'm going to lean on my players to fill in their own blanks when it feels appropriate. That is a bit of a new concept for these 2 players, so we started simple. Within the barracks break room, Eleanor and Pharrell enjoy some well-earned time off duty. Various other pilots come and go, grabbing drinks, making small talk, and discussing the lack of recent action. The pair sits watching episode 21,687 of One Piece. Tell me, what happened to this episode? We began this scene by having the players explain what had happened in the episode they were just watching. It took them a little bit of getting used to, but they did eventually settle on what happened during the episode and how their characters felt about it. Then I moved on to a more serious scene for them to help me describe. The alarm that had disturbed our previous 2 scenes rang out and the ship mobilized for combat. The 2 pilots needed to get into their mechs as soon as possible, but their mechs were on the far side of the starship. So I asked them what could you use to get to the other side of the starship as fast as possible. Mother was equipped with a mobility hardsuit and used the low gravity to fly through the ship, weaving between the various obstacles. Jackalope decided to sprint after her. I had hoped they would give themselves a little more freedom to make something up, and instead invented a scenario that could help them. Something like, oh, there's a mech running by, so I jump up and grab hold of one of the handles and hitch a ride. Or the ship has docked hover carts that we can use to get around the ship quickly. But it's probably just a comfortability thing, we'll get there. The pair rushed across the ship, finally reaching their mech hangar where their allies were already suiting up. In hindsight, I really should have paused here to give our players some time to roleplay before their first big mission. But I wanted to first give them some context about what this mission would be, and then I kind of just got caught up in the rhythm of the very long introductory text. As you guys are running, you hear across the intercom, "All hands to action stations. I repeat, all hands to action stations. This is not a drill. Set condition 1 Azure. Ready away ships for debarkation. All Marines and pilots, report to your assigned flight decks and for briefing and assignment." The relaxed state aboard this ship dissolves into instant chaos as everybody stops whatever they were doing and hurries to their stations. In the case of your squad, this is one of the Rio Grande's flight decks. Condition 1 Azure, you would know from your academy courses, is the call for a landing craft to be prepared for deployment. Whatever's happening, it isn't coming from space, it's on the planet below. Jackalope and Mother, you arrive at the station. The hangar that you guys are supposed to be heading towards. And as you do, the hangar is no less busy, with deckhands running and hurriedly preparing ships and chassis as Marines don their armor, and your squad mates hurry to mount their frames. The speakers crackle, and a display screen lights up with the face of First Lieutenant Kim, looking even more stressed and serious than he usually does, as he begins to address the assembled troops on the deck. As of 1400 hours, we are on combat alert. Several hours ago, we received a transmission from Ambassador Banerjee that civil defense warnings were being sounded across Nov Elysia. And then all communications with the surface went dark. And we've been unable to raise the ambassador, the captain, or anybody within the local government. Based on orbital flyover imagery gathered by Rio, it appears that Nova Elysia is under attack by the Western sovereignty forces, with significant deployment of mechanized chassis forces throughout the city. He waits a few moments to let it sink in, and then continues. Crescedium is not officially a member of the Union at this point. Militarily, we are not authorized to intervene on behalf of the LSA in this conflict. But simply leaving the Captain Ferris and the Ambassador Banerjee to ride this out on their own is not an option. As such, after conferring with other officers aboard this ship, it's been decided that we will be conducting a rescue operation with the primary objective of first locating and then securing the Ambassador and the Captain, and safely escorting them to an extraction point. Rules of engagement for this operation are that you are not to engage unless fired upon. Our main priority here is to bring our people home. We then began to discuss out of game the mission details, which are as follows. The mission objective is to land at Forward Operating Base Sabre and await further orders. The mission parameters are unknown at this time. Hostile forces are confirmed to be operating within the city of Nova Elysia, so they should anticipate enemy contact. However, they should only engage if fired upon. The stakes of the mission is that failure to reach the Forward Operating Base in good time will result in delays and narrow the rescue window. The reward will be reaching license level 1, and if everything goes well, as in they win all of the combats, they'll get access to some exotic gear. And since this is an emergency mission, there is no time to secure any reserves. I gave all this information to the players, answered any questions they had, and then we began.
May the saints bless us and lead us to glory, for we are armor, and we never fail.
That's right.
Whatever he said.
You'll climb into your mechs, prepare for deployment, climbing into one of the very large deployment ships. Standard orbit to surface deployment protocols would be to ferry troops down to the surface in a landing craft at a designated operating base for assignment. And in the case of pilots, chassis printing is required. At least that's how it's supposed to happen. But right now, the area of operation is simply too hot to risk a conventional landing, and the clock is ticking fast. With the situation on the ground growing more critical by the hour, the XO has decided that a combat-ready strike force of mechanized chassis and marines will be fast deployed via dropships to a secure area, locate the captain and the ambassador, and extract for pickup. Your squad has been selected to be part of this spear tip. Your mechs are prepped and loaded aboard the dropship, ready for deployment. Through your chassis camera feeds strapped securely into the cockpit, you watch as the hatches slide closed around you and the hangar airlocks open for launch. From here, Crescedium looks peaceful, a shimmering jewel hanging in space. 10 seconds to drop. You take a deep breath as the pilot counts down. Inhale, exhale. And then your stomach lurches as the clamps disengage and the dropship's thrusters kick into full burn. The ride is smooth at first. Atmospheric insertion normal. No anti-orbital defenses rising to meet you. It's all very textbook, straight out of the simulations. But the closer you get to the drop point, the hotter things become. The pilots having to adjust their course to avoid a greater concentration of incoming fire. The ship jukes hard to narrowly avoid another incoming missile. And for a moment, you think that you are in the clear. Suddenly, a blinding beam of light lashes up from somewhere down below and an explosion rips through the hull. Shit, the starboard engine's blown. Stabilizers aren't responding. Mayday, Mayday, this is Kingfisher 2-2. We are going down. I repeat, we are going. The ship crashes violently and suddenly, slamming you around inside the cockpit of your chassis. But the cockpit is also what saves you, as the dropship hits the ground hard with the sound of screeching metal. What's left of the dropship finally skids to a halt, and just as suddenly, it's all over, leaving you reeling and bruised. Your cockpit readouts blare with collision alarms and your ears are ringing, but you are all still alive, and your mechs are still in one piece. With nothing but static on all frequencies, you can assume that help isn't coming. For now, you are on your own. It's time to get to work. Team Effort pulled themselves free of the wreckage and saw that they had crashed in some kind of city square. The dropship had crashed through a large statue and there was debris littering the area. Gunfire could be heard all around, echoing off the large city buildings. They had no time to breathe, as the crash had attracted the attention of some nearby sovereignty forces and some enemy mechs approached. Partisan raised his hand in a cautious greeting, but moments later a bullet tore through the air, missing by mere inches. But that was the permission they needed for combat. This first combat is a holdout sitrep. This requires them to secure a site and hold it for 6 rounds as the enemy attempts to force them out and gain control themselves. Luckily, the area they needed to secure was the crash point, and they began the mission already entrenched in the objective zone, with the ruins of the dropship for cover. Alright, combat. Usually in the campaign diaries, I summarize the fights and talk about the important moments and how the tactics went, but since Lance is first and foremost a combat game, the combat is most of the game. This first combat, for example, takes up the remaining 2.5 hours of this first session, and then the first hour and a half of the next session. Hey, we're learning, we'll get quicker, hopefully. So in this series, the combats are going to be more of a play-by-play, so that we can talk tactics, build choices, etc. Side note, between sessions I fixed the blurry reactive imagery and the kind of unbalanced audio, so if you notice those things get better, that means we've moved on to session 2. Let's get into our first ever Lancer combat. The players always go first in combat, so Partisan activated first. He's primarily a melee fighter, but he does have a howitzer with a 20 range and a 2 blast. He fired this arcing missile down on the southern deployment zone, targeting an assault and a support NPC. Unfortunately, this engaging attack missed both targets. He then stayed stood out in the open rather than moving into cover. As I said, we're learning. On the enemy's turn, a Bastion NPC activated. This size 2 mech is a tanky boy designed to take hits and essentially make the players waste time trying to bring it down. It doesn't actually have many hit points, but with 3 armor and the death counter system, reducing the first instance of damage each round to 0, it became a long-term problem for our pilots. The Bastion moved, dashed into the difficult terrain left by the crash, and then fired its rotary grenade launcher at Jackalope, dealing 4 damage. Archangel activated and triggered their steady aim protocol, making them immobilized but giving them an accuracy dice on rifle shots. He then deployed a Jericho cover, blocking part of the path to the objective zone. Archangel then fired a shot at the assault in spawn using his anti-material rifle. This hit, causing the assault to use its hunker down reaction to gain resistance. This reduced a whopping 10 damage down to 5. The assault NPC that had just been shot activated and hurried after the Bastion. The Bastion could be used as hard cover, so it positioned itself behind it, and since he was still out of range for its weapons, that was all for now. Aramis activated and used her Project Shield protocol to create a floating shield between her and the assault. She then moved into cover and fired her Hunter Killer Nexus at the Bastion. The tiny drones crit the Bastion, but this was eaten by its death counter, leaving it undamaged. She then moved back out of cover. The southern assault spent a full turn rushing alongside the southern edge of the difficult terrain. Mother activated and launched a full tech attack on the Bastion. The first hack failed, but thanks to Data Siphon, she at least got a free scan. The second hack succeeded, and she invaded, impairing and slowing it. The Hive NPC activated, and this thing is built to lock off areas and cause heat buildup. It chased after the Bastion, also slotting into the hardcover and waiting, since it was out of range to engage. Sawbones activated and hurried forwards. She fired a mortar at the Bastion, but missed, and then retreated away from the front. The final enemy was a support NPC. This thing has no way of hurting our pilots, but is here to keep the other enemies in the fight. It followed after the assault, and then deployed a restock drone that the assault could use later. Lastly was Jackalope. He launched a mortar over the ship and hit the clustered 3 NPCs. Only the Hive took damage, but this was scary enough that I made the mental note to spread them out a little bit next time. Jackalope then headed north and set up some Jericho deployable cover to force a longer route if the enemies did decide to try and take that path. That was the end of round 1. The enemies start just far enough out that it actually forces them to take quite inefficient turns on that first round, just because they're trying to close the distance. The Bastion had already solidified itself as the player's main target, which is good for me as that thing is very hard to take down. There's been a bit of damage on both sides, but no NPCs have been killed, meaning their numbers are about to increase. I added a Ronin and a Bombard NPC into the 2 separate southern ingress zones, and since the players activated last on the previous round, the NPCs start this round. I began with the Bastion again, trying to keep their attention on it. It began by using its friendly interdiction on Archangel, gaining resistance to the damage from him. It then pushed forward through the difficult terrain, although the slow from Mother meant that it barely made any progress. Since it was still kind of nerfed and its gun was unloaded, it stabilized and reloaded. Archangel rushed around the barricade and deployed a frag mine to block the path for the Bastion. He then took another shot at the damaged Assault, who hunkered down again and ended up taking no damage due to armor. Archangel then overcharged, taking 1 heat and boosting back behind cover. Since the group was very grouped up, I activated the Bombard and threw everything I had into the attack. Bombard cannon, plus Earthshaker shells, plus cluster munitions, plus high impact shells. I wanted to immediately show that they can't ignore this enemy. Mother and Partisan avoided the blast, but Aramis, Archangel, and the 2 deployed shields were blasted by explosive damage. Aramis and Archangel were thrown by the impact, and 2 pieces of hardcover were created. Luckily, some good hull saves meant that nobody was knocked prone by the Earthshaker shells. Mother launched another full tech attack on the Bastion, again failing one and succeeding one. This time the successful hack was used to lock on. She then tried to spread out to avoid another blast like before. The Northern Assault followed the Bastion, taking position of cover behind it and shot a Partisan. A hit dealing 6 damage. As a side note, Assault hit really hard. They kind of come across as a default unit, but I don't think they are. They're pretty scary. It then boosted into some size 3 cover to break line of sight. Since he's size 2, Jackalope moved over the size 1 terrain to get eyes on the Hive. He first fired a mortar on the Assault and the Bastion, hitting just the Assault. Since it had already hunkered down, it had to take full damage. Luckily for me, a low roll and armor meant that it ended up only taking 2 damage. He then finished his barrage by shooting the Hive with his assault rifle. The attack missed, but at least the assault rifle has reliable, so dealt 2 damage anyway. The Hive acted in retaliation and deployed some razor swarms right on top of Jackalope. It then moved closer and used a drone barrage tech attack against Archangel. This built 2 heat and left him immobilized and impaired. Partisan decided that he needed to deal with the Bombard, and he rushed south using his movement, a boost, and the once per scene initiative trait to move 15 tiles in 1 turn. This left him very alone and kind of out of position, so I activated the Ronin to punish this a bit. The Ronin moved, boosted, and then struck Partisan with his sword. This was enough damage to break the first structure on Partisan, so he braced. This let him resist the damage at the cost of actions on his next turn, but it kept him from losing a structure already. Sawbones tried to provide a bit of support to Partisan, moving to get line of sight on the Ronin, but sadly then missing the attack. She also deployed a turret drone nearby to help with later attacks. The support just kept travelling along the bottom edge of the combat zone. Aramis attacked the Bastion and consumed the lock-on. This was a hit, but the Bastion hadn't been attacked yet, so death counter reduced the damage to 0. If they want to deal with this Bastion, it needs to be a team effort. Aramis then used a successful tech attack to reapply the lock-on. All that was left was the Southern Assault, which used its movement and a boost to cut across the difficult terrain and shoot Archangel. It missed, although Assaults have reliable, so it still dealt 2 damage. By the end of round 2, our players are still yet to kill any mechs. They're still holding the main objective, but both Partisan and Archangel are in kind of precarious situations. The Bastion is holding their attention maybe too well, and the enemy are getting close to storming the objective zone. I decided that to prevent the turns getting way too long, I was not going to add any more reinforcements until they started killing some mechs. Round 3 kicked off with Mother doing another full tech attack on the Bastion. She first consumed the lock-on to apply lock-on, and this triggered her snow crash, causing the Bastion to be moved away. She then invaded. During this attack, the Bastion was pushed past its heat cap. This was kind of my fault for not explaining it beforehand, but the players had thought that this meant that he would have a reactor meltdown and die. That is not how NPCs work though. Instead, they go into a state of exposed and take double damage from most sources. This was a little disappointing to them, since he hadn't acted yet and they knew that he could easily resolve that with a stabilize. I intentionally activated the Ronin next, before Partisan could have their turn, as I wanted them to start thinking about turn priority on their side. The Ronin managed to knock Partisan past his HP threshold, dealing the first point of structure damage. This resulted in Partisan losing his howitzer mount. The party was still focused on the Bastion, and they really wanted to make use of the current exposed status. Aramis hurried closer and hit the Bastion with her Hunter-Killer Nexus. As always, the first instance of damage was reduced to 0 by the death counter. She then boosted closer, ready to get into melee on the next round. Since the party kept saying that the Bastion was probably going to activate early and clear its heat, I felt that it would have been pretty obvious if I'd purposely avoided doing that, so the Bastion activated, cleared heat, and reloaded. Jackalope activated. Because he was stood in a Razor Swarm, he immediately gained 2 burn, and then barraged the Bastion with the Mortar and Assault Rifle. He did hit, but a low damage roll meant that it was fully blocked by the Bastion's 3 armor. Jackalope then retreated away from the Razor Swarms, back towards the objective zone. The Northern Assault rushed towards the objective zone, first shooting Aramis with an assault rifle and then engaging her in melee. Sawbones barraged the Ronin with a mortar and assault rifle, only dealing a bit of reliable damage. Her rolls have not been nice. The Bombard activated and successfully recharged its Earthshaker shells. It fired its cannon, hitting Archangel, Aramis, and a deployed shield, and missing Jackalope. This was enough to destroy a structure on Archangel, who was left stunned. Aramis braced this attack. This time the Earthshaker shells left all 3 mechs prone. Partisan had braced, so he only had 1 quick action this turn. He used it to melee the Ronin and critically hit. Thanks to the brutal trait, this meant it dealt max damage. Sawbones also used her reaction to add an extra 3 damage with her turret drone. The Hive moved closer to the objective zone and attacked Aramis with its Hunter-Killer Nexus. This knocked a structure off Aramis, but she rolled well and it became a glancing blow with no permanent damage. The Hive then hacked and invaded Mother, leaving her immobilized and impaired. Archangel was stunned, so we had to pass his turn as he lay prone with no cover. And that just left me with a few NPCs. The Southern Assault finally reached the objective zone, becoming the first one to get inside. It shot at Mother, dealing a little bit of reliable damage. The support just began moving through the difficult terrain, safely blocking the line of sight using the downed ship. That was the end of round 3. We are now halfway through the sitrep, and the players are still yet to kill any NPCs. And now the NPCs were starting to reach the objective zone. I decided that I was going to add a Ronin Grunt and a Priest to the top left ingress zone. And this was so that I could split the party's attention away from that main battle on the right-hand side. Luckily, this is where we took our break, so the players had a full week to think on how things had gone and stew on their choices a bit. For these next 3 rounds, I think we're going to see some better performance from our players, as they've now had a chance to think about how their mechs work and begin to think a little more tactically. Also, from here on out, the audio is fixed, the reactive imagery is fixed, so nice and professional, look at that. As we kicked off, I gave the players a couple of minutes to talk about strategy. It had been a week, so I thought they might need to refresh themselves on what's going on. I think this ended up being really helpful for getting them all on the same page and helping them pick their targets. Something I was really happy about was that as a group they decided that the Bastion should not be the focus of their attention, and they needed to start clearing the weaker guys. Archangel kicked us off and he immediately stabilized, reloading and cooling his mech. He also stood up, and then he used the initiative trait to boost into cover. The Assault fighting Aramis took advantage of the adjacent Hive to use rank Discipline and give itself accuracy on a barrage against Aramis. It ended up hitting with its assault rifle, but missing with its knife. Partisan was eager to deal with the Bombard, but he first had to get past the pesky Ronin. He barraged with 2 melee weapons and claimed our first kill. He then began running for the Bombard. The Assault in the objective zone targeted Mother as she was out of cover, however it did miss regardless. It then quick hacked her and put a lock on her. Aramis was getting nervous, so she went next and stabilized. She stood up and then she cleared her heat and her burn. She then used the Everest's initiative to take a free quick action and hit the Assault with a melee weapon. It hunkered down and survived the attack, but then Aramis put an Exemplar's mark on it, allowing missed attacks from her allies to be re-rolled. The Priest moved and boosted to get within Censor's range of Archangel and then used Abjure on him. This meant that Archangel would take 2 heat whenever they attacked on his next turn. Sawbones went next and tried to barrage. She mortared the Hive and Assault, and Assault rifled the other assault, dealing a small amount of damage to each. She then used initiative to take a quick action and issued an order with the leader trait. She told Partisan to kill the bombard, so now he would gain an accuracy on that course of action. That's a very cool ability. The Grunt Ronin chased after the priest and waited behind them. With it being a grunt and all, I had to kind of play it safe with this one. Jackalope stood up and stabilized to restore hit points and remove burn. The hive activated, and because Aramis was in 3 of it, she took 2 burn. It targeted Archangel with a drone barrage tech attack. This resulted in Archangel moving back out of cover into the open, and then it moved back behind cover. Aramis tried to overwatch it with her shotgun, but missed. Mother moved up and decided it was time for some physical attacks, rather than more tech attacks. She fired her missile rack and thermal rifle at the assault in the objective zone, critting with the thermal rifle, and then gave it a lock-on. The bombard probably wasn't long for this world, so it blasted Aramis, Archangel, and Jackalope again. However, it missed everybody this time. At least the Earthshaker shells knocked Archangel prone, as well as an assault on its own side. The Bastion moved forwards, triggering the mine, though its armor did tank it. It then slammed its shield into Aramis. Lastly, the support hurried south to try and help the bombard. After round 4, we've now had our first kill! Yay! Our heroes are still in control of the objective zone, but the enemies are getting closer and closer. If they can clear a few more units, they might have a confirmed win. Despite the single NPC kill, I again didn't add any reinforcements, trying to keep the turns a little shorter. Kicking off around 5, Aramis was in a pretty scary spot, so she went first to stabilize, healing and removing burn. She also used her projected shield protocol against the Bastion. Aramis then moved to the other assault, trying to get out of range of that repeated bombard attack. This did get her hit by the assault rifle, as it did overwatch her. The prone assault stood up and shot Archangel, getting accuracy for being adjacent to an ally. It then boosted into melee with him. Partisan desperately wanted to stop the bombard from going again, so he moved into melee with it and barraged. He dealt good damage, but it did survive his attack, so with the first use of overcharge, he attacked again, and this time brought it down. A little too late to help, the support activated and moved closer to Partisan, spraying him with sealant foam and slowing him. Jackalope rushed to the assault and tried to ram it, but failed. He then smashed it with his heavy charge blade, killing another enemy mech. He then moved to Archangel to give him cover against the Bastion. The priest rushed across the gap, back into hardcover, and hacked Mother, leaving her impaired. Sawbones shot the assault, which hunkered down to resist the damage. The second attack she made was a miss. The Ronin Grunt moved and boosted, finishing behind hardcover in the objective zone. Archangel took a risk, and instead of stabilizing, he used his steady aim protocol to immobilize himself in exchange for accuracy, and fired at the priest, which did have hardcover. This hit for over half the priest's health, but it was still standing. He then threw a frag grenade at the assault, dealing a little bit of damage, but leaving this one in the fight too. The Hive used a full attack to hack both Jackalope and Aramis. Both ended up immobilized rather than choosing the forced movement from the drone barrage. This is probably smart, as we were approaching the final round and they needed to be inside of that objective zone. Mother tried to kill the Ronin Grunt, but after missing a shot, she instead hacked it, impairing and slowing it. She then used the Chomolungma's Brilliance trait to free hack the priest, which failed, but also to bolster Sawbones. The assault barraged Aramis, reducing her to 2 hit points. The Bastion then blasted Archangel and Jackalope with its grenade launcher. Luckily, everybody avoided the attack, aside from some random cover. By the end of round 5, we've started to clear the board a bit. One of the dangerous assaults is dead, along with the very scary bombard. Although it was too late for them to do anything meaningful, I did add 2 assault grunts, just to put the pressure on for this final round. Sawbones kicked off this final round with a mortar strike on the priest and the Ronin. Unfortunately, both attacks missed. She then tried to heavy machine gun the assault and missed. Poor Sawbones has the worst luck with attack rolls. She was very eager to hit something, so she used her initiative trait and shot again, finally hitting the assault, which hunkered down to keep itself alive, but she wasn't down. She overcharged, fired her assault rifle, missed, but the reliable damage did kill the assault. At this point, I knew our players had this in the bag, so I started playing for the long game, doing little petty attacks to deal a bit of extra damage and force those heroes to use more of their repairs. I began with the priest, which used a full tech attack to attack Mother and Sawbones, but it failed on both hacks. Archangel shot the Ronin with a reliable assault rifle, which meant that it was dead, even if he missed. However, even Grunt Ronin can use Rebound to knock the bullet back at their attacker. It rolled a d6 and got a 5. Archangel had to remake the attack on himself. Archangel made the attack on himself and dealt 5 damage, destroying his own structure and forcing a direct hit. If he failed this next hull check, he'd have to destroy his own mech. Luckily, he succeeded and was only stunned for the second time. The Bastion rammed Jackalope, trying to knock them prone but failing. It did manage to slam him with its shield though. Mother chose to stabilize to cool off and reload. One of the newly arrived Grunt assaults did just get close enough to shoot Sawbones. The attack was through hard cover, so it did miss, but 2 points of reliable damage. Aramis also stabilized to heal up and then moved into the objective zone. The Hive targeted Jackalope with its Hunter-Killer Nexus, dealing a bit of burn. Jackalope also decided to stabilize to clear the burn and heal up. The other new assault ran as far as it could, but it wasn't able to make it anywhere useful. Partisan attacked the support with a melee barrage, hitting with both but leaving it alive, which just left the support, which sounded the retreat. Having failed to take the objective zone, the Sovereign forces fled back into the city, leaving our heroes victorious after their first battle. It had been a tough start to this mission with some misplays and no shortage of bad rolls, but they had survived and come out on top. Scanning the fallen enemy mechs, they did notice that one had an intact communications device, one that they could use to call in an enemy artillery strike once. This was given to Jackalope as he is size 2 and can, in theory, see more with line of sight. We took a rest, allowing the pilots to spend repairs to fix up their mechs. This was the group's first opportunity to roleplay together, so I gave them some time for some after-battle revelry.
When we all like regroup up, I want to walk over to Partisan still in my mech and like clap him on the shoulder. Good job out there. Hey.
Yeah, no, I almost killed 3 of them.
Dude, I thought you for sure were dead when you went out there by yourself, but good job, man.
Yeah. Ah, this is it. I know it now. This is what I was born to do. Oh, too bad about our allies on that ship.
Yeah, I mean, I think we avenged them pretty well though, but I can't if you show me up like that next time we go together, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. We'll do that thing that we practiced.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we still need a code name for it.
But you know, it starts itching all over when I'm not shopping anything.
Yeah, especially with your other gun missing. You're gonna have to be in there in the fray.
One shot and now it's gone.
At least your decals look good though, right? Not a scratch on it.
Nope, not a scratch. It's quite crazy.
Honestly though, Archangel, damn, that was brutal. You doing good?
Yeah. The Saint was looking out for me today, I guess. You know.
I feel like something was definitely watching over your shoulder, but that was rough.
There are good days, there are bad days. We all walked away, so we all are blessed by something, right?
Hell yeah. Team effort, first run. Good job.
And more to come.
Shit, yeah. What do we do now?
This isn't really according to the plan, as I recall it.
Well, we weren't supposed to crash land.
No, exactly. Is this
Would've been
what they
pretty
mean
sick if we
about
were,
no
though.
plan surviving the first encounter? Because this feels apt in that regard.
Is there any way for us to contact Rio?
Hey, so we kind of crash landed. I'm not sure. I imagine I can describe where we are.
I'm gonna look for some street signs.
Yeah.
Going low tech on this one.
We managed to stave off some of the enemies who came to see what was up.
Or like yell over your shoulder. Stave off. You mean
Comrade.
murdered?
Hell yeah!
Yeah. Some of our comrades unfortunately did not survive the crash. Where should we go?
Hi, this is Rio from the Rio Grande. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Splendid. You seem to have crashed a fair distance from forward operating base Saber. Please rendezvous to forward operating base Saber at your earliest convenience.
Okay, great.
Also, we are an unknown entity to the people of this planet, but we are undergoing negotiations necessary to bring them under Union governance. So, if you do run into any souls in need, make a good impression, yeah?
Sure. Do our best.
You need to head west if you're going to find the forward operating base. It should be kind of obvious once you get closer. It should pop up on your radars. Any further questions?
No, I don't believe so.
Alrighty, I will relink with you soon. Bye!
Great. Westward ho, friends.
And as they set off into the war-torn city, that is where we're going to leave this first episode. I really like Lancer. The combats are tactical and weighty. There's plenty of diversity in playstyle, even at license level 0. And it has a really nice, relaxed vibe to it for some reason. So I'm super excited to keep playing. I think there is a pretty brutal learning curve, especially in this module. So I might need to ease up on some of these later battles if they're going to make it through this first mission. But so far, I'm enjoying it. The players seem to be having a good time. And there's a really good energy in the group about it. Thank you so much for watching. This system has forced my hand a bit with how I present these campaign diaries, but if you do have any feedback on this style of campaign diary, then please leave it in the comments. Whether that's wanting more or less focus on the combat, more or less focus on the roleplay, more or less rules explanations. Whatever you think could make these videos a better viewing experience, let me know. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, then leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing are the best ways to help out a small channel. If you're new here, we do have a main campaign that's been ongoing for about 2 years now that uses the Pathfinder system. And we also have several smaller series, such as a 3-part horror series based in the Shiver system. So check them out, you might enjoy them, you might find a new system you like. But that is all for today. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.